David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
All right, the topic of how to fix the Democratic Party. This keeps coming up in different ways, and the context has been just the election results of 2016, right? Losing to Donald Trump, if you're in the Democratic Party, should really make you question, well, we have a problem and we need to fix it. How do we do it? DNC meddling and this general problem of corporate Democrats, the problem of Tom Perez as DNC chair, sort of continuing this establishment Democrat problem. And then, of course, the urgency of suppressing Trumpism, right? What can Democrats do in the immediate to try to prevent or suppress the ideas of the Trump administration, however harebrained and ragtag they may be? And they're pretty harebrained, as we've been covering for more than 9 months at this point. So there's a macro and a micro here, right? An example of the macro that needs to be discussed is Democrats need to move to the left. Democrats need to take stronger progressive positions on important issues. Micro would be maybe the superdelegates need to go. Maybe that's something that we need to look at. And recently, we've actually heard some calls from some Democratic elected officials saying that superdelegates have to go. Bernie Sanders recently wrote an article with the same title, How to Fix the Democratic Party, in Politico. And it included some interesting things, some ideas that I found a little bit less relevant. And I wanted to discuss this. And this is not meant to be all encompassing, but I'm going to talk about some of the areas in which Democrats Inc. really needs to shape up. And the first step in any intervention is you've got to admit that you have a problem, right? And Bernie Sanders points this out, and it's abundantly true, which is the current strategy just isn't working. What I call Democrats Inc. have lost 1,000 seats in state legislatures in the U.S. in I don't know how many years. Republicans now control the House and the Senate and more than 30 of the 50 governorships and, of course, the White House. And in the end, remember, we lost to Donald Trump. Despite demographics shifting in the favor of the Democratic Party over the last 15, 20 years, despite Donald Trump being this incompetent buffoon appealing to the lowest common denominator, we still lost as progressives through the Democratic Party. And again, I'm not a Democrat, but I'm a progressive. And right now, I still see the Democratic Party as a major conduit to possible progressivism. Listen to myself even hedging that language, right? It's not good when you lose to Donald Trump. So let's start going through a list of some things that Democrats should do, starting with you got to fix the DNC, right? Meaning, number one, get a real progressive running it. And number two, stop messing with the primaries. The DNC as this unbiased, impartial arbiter of the primary process, that's a pipe dream that was destroyed by what took place in 2016. You got to fix the DNC at the you got to fix Democrats at the DNC level, number one. Number two, get rid of superdelegates. Superdelegates, I get it, right? They are there supposedly to protect against some crazy, wacky insurgent. This isn't the Republican Party, right? The left-wing equivalent of Donald Trump isn't going to win the Democratic primary merely because you get rid of superdelegates. And I believe it is time for superdelegates to go. Number three, work endlessly, tirelessly on preventing voter suppression. And that means you also have to work on voter registration. It's sort of a two-part thing. I've said it before. The time it will take you to convince a Trumpist not to vote for his reelection in 2020, you could get 10 people who are already sort of on the left but may never have voted out to the polls, or at least 5 people, whatever. There's some big imbalance there in the amount of time, and preventing the voter suppression, right? That is a major thing. Republicans have been super upfront about the fact that they realize the demographics are increasingly on the side of Democrats. Do not let Republicans suppress the vote. And that doesn't mean 3 months before the election to start blogging about irregularities with voting machines in Pennsylvania, right? That means now. That means now we have to be working on preventing the voter suppression tactics from succeeding. Now, let's talk a little bit about policy, right? Number 4, on policy, move to the left. And this applies to a number of different issues. Healthcare, there needs to be a more decided left-wing push. There is a debate to be had about whether or not the Democratic Party should make it their platform to have single-payer healthcare. Bill Scher, for example, and many of you disagreed with his view, and I disagreed with it to a great extent, Bill Scher said, it's a mistake for Democrats to say our policy, our platform is now single-payer. Our platform should be improving Obamacare. I don't necessarily agree with Bill Scher. You don't have to. But what's clear is you got to move to the left on healthcare. And it can't be, it would be nice to have a public option if it's okay, but if not, we'll get rid of that as well. That's a weak position. Okay, that can't be the position on healthcare for Democrats. Move left on a living wage, right? Lots of issues when it comes to living wage. It's not just minimum wage. It's way more when we talk about a living wage. It has to do with cost of living. It has to do with inequality. I'm not going to get into the minutia of it now because this is an overview, but on a living wage, there are a number of ways that this needs to be approached. And then this gets to this broader issue that needs to be a core Democratic issue, which is number 5 on my list, which is a focus on economic fairness. Economic fairness includes income and wealth inequality, which connects to the minimum wage, but it also includes corruption and cronyism, this swamp draining that, of course, the opposite of which is actually happening under Donald Trump. The fact that we have 2 justice systems in the United States, one for the rich and one for everyone else, or maybe we say one for the poor and then one for everybody else. I don't know exactly how you want to slice and dice it, but we have at least 2 economic justice systems, rather. And that connects to the war on drugs as well. So economic fairness, and make it an issue of patriotism, as George Lakoff has suggested Democrats should frame it. Number 6, get out of the pragmatism illusion, okay? I am a pragmatist, sometimes to such a degree that people in our audience get irritated with me. But sometimes we fall for the pragmatism illusion, which ends up being a way to sort of hide corporate Democrats' commitment to the status quo and not having actual policy ideas that reflect where the public is, which generally is to the left of the Democratic Party. Number 7, get away from losing issues, okay? And we can debate which issues those are. There's those who say, gun safety is a losing issue for Democrats, not because it isn't important, but because even after Sandy Hook, with 85 or 90% public approval and President Obama in the White House and seemingly the best opportunity to pass 100% background checks, it still couldn't be done. And there's this idea that guns and other issues, and we could come up with the list on another day, that there are losing issues that are only going to get people to vote against you and won't really get people to vote with you, so that you've got to get away from those losing issues. And number 8, don't ignore the white working class. Now, I want to be really careful with how I explain this. I'm not saying that Democratic policy wouldn't be better for the white working class than Republican policy. It would be. There's no doubt about that. But the impression in the last election among many working class whites was that the Democrats don't really care about them. I don't believe that that's true. I believe that the policies of someone like Bernie Sanders would not only be good for non-white voters, but they would also be good for working class white voters. But you've got to make it clear that that's the case. So this is a difficult time to really make these changes. And usually it doesn't happen this way. I've been reading Hunter S. Thompson's book, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, which is about the 1972 campaign of George McGovern against Richard Nixon, the primary and the eventual loss to Richard Nixon in 72. And in the book, it's explained that were McGovern, this is the idea of Hunter S. Thompson, and I think there's a lot to it, were George McGovern to have won in November of 1972, he could have completely upended the structure of the Democratic Party. But the fact that McGovern lost, which is what happened, right? It made it so that the Democratic Party immediately went back to the good old boy stuff. And we have to make sure that we don't see a resurgence, and the Tom Perez selection as DNC chair scares me in this way, that we don't see a resurgence and a sort of planting of the feet or burying of the head in the sand away from the Bernie Sanders direction and more towards the sort of corporate Democrats Inc. direction. Not exactly an analogous situation, but I think there's a relevant lesson from 1972 in thinking about 2016 and the path forward. We'll go into each of these points in more detail over the coming months and in the lead up to the midterm election. But those are some of my ideas that I have so far, and I'd love to hear from our audience about it. Okay, let's get to our big Jenga thing. And I think we've got people knocking at the door. We've got crazy stuff going on. It's crazy what's going on in here, Pat. It's unbelievable, but we're doing a show here. So if people are going to break the door down, then I'm going to keep making Jenga moves. The game has been as follows. We are raising contributions through a platform called Patreon. That's at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. And what we've been doing is I have a Jenga tower on my desk. And for every 2 Patreon contributions, I've been moving one piece. I've so far moved 29 pieces. 29 gets doubled to 58. And if I am not able to move any more pieces, we will create a 58% discount code for membership for people. Okay, that's the idea.
I have one question. If you're able to move more than 50 pieces, does that mean that you have to start paying people for membership?
Yes, and of course it's not. It's just impossible because it will have toppled over at that point. It is mathematically impossible for that to happen, I believe, but we will see. Okay, so we now have, I got a message from a couple people saying that there's a particular piece over here that I should easily be able to move. It's not moving. That piece is deadlocked in place. So forget about that piece, okay? We have some new contributors, and I'm going to start moving pieces. And we thought this was going to fall late last week, and it didn't. Yes. Give me the first 2 names, Pat, and I'll see what I can do here. Let me get set up and get closer to this thing.
Patrick Roy and Bailey Watson.
Okay. It's just so tight right now. And I know people say if you touch a piece or something, you've got to move that piece, but I'm not playing with those rules. Let's see if there's any piece. And as you can see, the entire tower is teetering and tottering right now. And Pat looks so nervous. It's amazing how nervous Pat looks. Oh, no. Oh. That's it.
That was it?
Pat looks shocked at what just took place. That's it. 29 pieces was it. And it has crumbled. And Pat looks like he's going to cry, honestly. Are you upset about this? Or did it just stun you that it happened so quickly?
I thought you had a couple moves left.
I apologize that I've not been able to do better, but we got through 29 moves. This was a crazy idea, wasn't it? And the entire thing fell. And during the commercial break, we will vacuum up all of these pieces. That's a whole other thing, which I'm going to be performing just for Pat. It'll be an interpretive vacuuming up of Jenga wood. So we're going to set up a coupon code. It'll be for a 58% discount, and it will be Jenga58, Jenga 58. And we will allow people to sign up at a 58% discount for the membership of their choice on our website. We let it run till the end of the weekend or something like that?
I mean, I was speaking to accounting. I don't think we can afford a 58% discount.
Yeah, only if you give back some of those 300,000 memberships you've picked up can we afford that. Doesn't even make any sense. I don't know what I'm talking about. No, I am a little distraught by this. I was hoping to have another couple moves, but 29 moves, 58% discount. The coupon code is Jenga58. And why is this so funny to you, Pat? Pat's just cracking himself up with this.
I just love this whole idea.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jenga58, Jenga 58. We'll get this all cleaned up, and then we will get back to the show after the break.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Stan Little. Stan, thank you so much for being a David Pakman Show member. We do depend on the funding of members like Stan and all of our longtime sustaining members. Some of you members for 7 years at this point. 7 years, that's right. As of April 2017, we had our first 7-year members, which is incredible. So thanks to Stan and everybody else, davidpakman.com/membership is where you can sign up. The Jenga Tower crashed last segment, meaning that now you can use the coupon code Jenga58 to pick up a 58% discounted membership. Very, very exciting stuff. And of course, patreon.com/David Pakman Show. If you want to talk to other David Pakman Show viewers and listeners, and some of you may not, and I would understand that from the amount of trolling that we experience, but if you do want to engage in respectful political discussion, you can do so on our subreddit at davidpakman.com/reddit. I was browsing it this morning, found some interesting discussions that I wanted to talk to you about, starting with The first one about compulsory voting. This is an interesting idea, and I've mentioned that my birth country of Argentina has mandatory voting. And there are pros and cons we could identify with mandatory voting, compulsory voting, as it's also known, and an interesting discussion on Reddit about that. Also on our Reddit discussion forum, a link to my interview with Josh Zepps. I interviewed Josh Zepps on our show. I guess now it's been about 2 weeks. And I was interviewed on the Josh Zepps program as well, which is an audio-only podcast. And you can now check that out. It's a full hour episode, and we talk about a lot of different issues. You can check that out on our Reddit. Also on Reddit, a link to an interview, and I had forgotten about this interview. Back in, what year was it? I think 2014. I did an interview with Bill Scher called What's Up with Liberals on Russia and Putin? And in that video, we discuss why there is, or that there is, a strain of the left that seems sympathetic to the authoritarian rule of Vladimir Putin. And it is really relevant in terms of figuring out now why there is this faction of the left that might be resisting the allegations of Trump-Russia collusion above and beyond what evidence is or will be provided. So check out that interview. Thank you for posting it, by the way. I'm glad that this was found. And lastly, on the David Pakman Show Reddit, I was back on the Jesse Lee Peterson Show yesterday. I got kicked off the air, actually, and we will play that interview for you in the interview segment today. But someone put together some of the best screenshots from my last appearance with Jesse Lee Peterson, where I look just downright sad. I don't even know what the word is I would use for how I look here, Pat.
Disappointed.
Disappointed. I'm experiencing disdain, certainly, for Jesse Lee Peterson. So you can check that out, davidpakman.com/Reddit, and we will have my full interview with Jesse Lee Peterson in the interview segment today. Another day, another sexual assault allegation against Alabama Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore, lifelong man of God and constitutional conservative. I can't even get through that with a straight face. Roy Moore, who once thought he might give his life to stop gay marriage, is accused now by yet another woman, Tina Johnson, of sexual assault. Tina Johnson was in Roy Moore's law office in Gadsden, Alabama, with her mother. Johnson was 28 years old at the time. Her age is not the issue here. It's Roy Moore's actions that are at issue. And as soon as she walked into Roy Moore's office, she describes that Moore started flirting with her. At some point during the meeting, Roy Moore reportedly got up from his desk, came around and sat on the desk as opposed to at his desk chair, inches from Tina Johnson's face, and started asking weird questions about what color eyes Johnson's daughter had and whether Johnson's daughters, I believe it is, were as pretty as she was. And as they finished up the legal paperwork that was done in Roy Moore's office that day, Johnson and her mother start to leave, Johnson walking out of the office behind her mother. And as she did this, Roy Moore came up behind her, as she tells the story, and grabbed her by the buttocks. And she says specifically, he didn't pinch it, he grabbed it. And she says that she was so taken aback by this that she said nothing at the time, not even to her mother, although years after the incident, she told her sister about it. Although, of course, these allegations can't be checked or corroborated, AL.com looked into whether Johnson did have the paperwork done by Roy Moore. In other words, was she actually there getting legal services from Roy Moore? And indeed, Roy Moore has his signature on the child custody transfer that she completed with Moore in his office on that day. So another day, another accuser. And the question really becomes, what's the best scenario here? And I believe that the best scenario is whichever scenario gets us to a Democrat taking over this Senate seat. I'm agnostic as to whether or not Roy Moore steps aside. His name is going to be on the ballot either way. The election's only 3.5 weeks away. The guy won the primary, right? What will make Doug Jones the victor? That is the question. And I want to warn you right now, do not become complacent because of some of the polls that are being announced that are making headlines. There's a new poll getting a lot of attention, which has Roy Moore losing by 12 points to Doug Jones. And this poll was conducted by the National Republican Senatorial Committee after 5 women had accused Roy Moore of pursuing them while they were teenagers. Doug Jones, 51, Roy Moore, 39, according to this poll. So don't pay attention to that particular poll because there are numerous other polls that say that this is a close race. There are other polls that say that Roy Moore is still ahead. And you have to understand that the NRSC which did this poll, polled their support for Moore, and who knows what their interests are at this point. They may be trying to publicly poll support to show that they did the right thing, but at the same time, maybe create complacency among liberals by showing that Moore is way behind. I would just not pay attention to this poll, especially since it seems to be an outlier. And there's people emailing me saying, David, it's over. It is not over. Phone bank, donate, knock on doors. Roy Moore happens to be a horrible person with terrifying politics. But that aside, a Democrat taking this solid Republican Senate seat that was vacated, remember, as a result of Donald Trump's choice of Jeff Sessions for Attorney General, this would be a major victory for Democrats to tack on to the recent wins earlier this month. So pay no attention to the poll. Pay lots of attention to the growing list of accusers of sexual assault against Roy Moore. It turns out that even Roy Moore's attorney is some kind of moron. Roy Moore is, of course, the Republican candidate now accused by, I believe the number is up to 6 or more women of inappropriate sexual behavior. Some of them were underage, some were not. And his attorney is this guy named Trenton Garmon, who went on MSNBC to try to defend the totally indefensible. And it went bad, and I mean really bad, where he started basically saying that the ethnic background of the interviewer might make it so he can't understand why in some of these situations in Alabama, it was perfectly reasonable for Roy Moore to ask the permission of the parents of teen girls for him to date them as a 30-something-year-old. It is absolutely bizarre, okay? And the interviewers are Ali Velshi and Stephanie Ruhle. They are here trying to figure out, what is this about? It's totally normal to have to ask parents permission. And listen to the answer from Roy Moore's attorney. Could not be more bizarre.
If Roy Moore doesn't remember, how could he say that it's definitively false? And number two, why would he need permission from any of these girls' mothers if they weren't underage?
Sure, that's a good question. And culturally speaking, I would say there's differences. I looked up Allie's background there. Wow, that's awesome that you have got such a diverse background. It's really cool to read through that. But point is this,
what does Allie's background have to do with dating a 14-year-old?
I'm not finished with the context of it.
Well, please answer. What does Ali Velshi's background have to do with dating children, 14-year-old girls?
Sure. In other countries, there's arrangement through parents for what we would refer to as consensual marriage. So
Allie's from Canada.
I understand that. And Allie's also spent time in other countries, of which I've gone to. So it's not a bad thing.
I don't know where you're going with this, Trent.
Stephanie, but here's to answer your question. So he said no, comma. So he answered no. And then he went on to say his process would be, before he date anybody, whether they're 25, 35, or whether he doesn't know their age, he would ask the mother's permission. So he actually answered no. There's no inconsistency in that. And I stand by the answer. To me, it's the most appropriate, proper answer. When I begin to court my wife.
I tried to put together an analysis of this. It's unanalyzable, right? Canadians can't understand Alabama. Even in Massachusetts, we have questions about what goes on in Alabama, but it has nothing to do with anybody's ethnic background, that's for sure. Ali Velshi is from Canada. He is an Ismaili Muslim of Gujarati Indian descent, so he can't understand the idea of Alabama parents giving permission for Roy Moore to date their kids. What is the idea that if Ali was more familiar with Alabama, he'd understand that 14-year-olds are considered fair game for 30-something-year-old lawyers? And then I actually thought a little more about this, and it potentially is quite a bit darker. Maybe what Roy Moore's attorney meant is that since Ali Velshi, despite being raised in Canada, he was born in Kenya. His father is of Indian origin. His mother is of South African origin. And again, he is Muslim. And maybe Roy Moore has this idea that because of something in Ali Velshi's background, he should be defending Roy Moore because asking parents for permission to date their daughter is not that different than the arranged marriages that maybe his lawyer thinks Ali Velshi was in some way aware of because of the countries that his parents are from. It's insane, right? And that's the only heads or tails I can even try to make out of this. And something is very off with this lawyer. He tried to give Don Lemon a weird nickname on CNN the other night, and it's almost as weird as what I just played for you. Take a look at this.
The statute of limitations has run out, so there will be no
judge and jury. There will be no process. The
Yeah.
process is that a woman has come forward
I hear you.
on the record.
But hey, Don, lemon squeezy, keep it easy. Here's the thing,
It's
man.
just
the
lemon.
statute has not
My mom
run,
didn't name me. Hold
so
on. My mom didn't name me Don Lemon.
got you.
Keep it easy squeezy. It's just Don Lemon. Go on.
I got you, man. So what I'm saying, Don, is
I gotcha, man. Is this how Roy Moore's attorney thinks you talk to black people? You call them man and you nickname them with things like Don Lemon, Squeezy, Keep It Easy. This is one of those stories that when I first saw the headlines floating around, I immediately thought, oh, this has been taken drastically out of context. It can't possibly actually be this bad. That's often the case when I see Trump headlines and then you see the content, you see Trump's tweets or you see Roy Moore's lawyer and you realize, oh no, if anything, the headlines are understating how insane this is. I guess if anything is coherent here, it's that Roy Moore's lawyer seems to be as out there as Roy Moore himself. And hopefully after the special election on December 12th, we never hear from either of these guys ever again. Discuss this with us on our subreddit, davidpakman.com/REDDIT.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Okay, so yesterday I was on the Jesse Lee Peterson program, which is, I believe, a syndicated radio show, and it's now on Newsmax TV, which is like extreme right-wing TV. And they've been asking me to come back on the program for a while now. And the first time I did it, it was such a waste of time because the guy, it's just a disastrous program. I can't imagine why anyone would watch this program nor even hire this guy to host a show. I don't really know the logistics of the arrangement, but I agreed to go back on. And, you know, I'll be honest, I didn't take it seriously because the first time I was on, it wasn't a serious interview. It was just basically talking points that this guy would state, and whenever I would try to actually have a conversation about the facts, he would just go on to the next question. So I wasn't taking it seriously, but he kicked me off. I got kicked off of the show. I think it was scheduled to be like a roughly 20-minute interview, and I think after about 7 minutes, I got kicked off. And I was just going to play for you the part of the interview that I'm on, but then after, he starts going into this unintelligible explanation of how he didn't remember that he had ever had me on, even though then he talks about how I did the same thing this time as I did last time, but I thought you didn't remember that I was on last time. It's so weird. And then the best part for me, Pat, is he starts talking to his producer.
Yeah.
And you can tell that his producer clearly seems to be more or less in line with Jesse Lee Peterson's politics. But his producer gets that I was actually trying to have a conversation about, well, Jesse, defend what you're saying about Donald Trump. And the producer and Jesse Lee Peterson seem to get into a disagreement about me.
Do you think this was your big break and you ruined it?
I think that this was an absolute disaster for the future of my career on television stations like Newsmax, because I assume that I'm now blacklisted because they just cut me off because I wasn't communicating the way that they wanted me to communicate.
I love the terms that Jesse uses. Like, people on the left are children of the lie.
Children of the lie.
Donald Trump is the great white hope.
Great white hope, children of the lie. I'm part of the group of Satan and evil people. Anyway, I got kicked off of right-wing TV. That's our interview today. Let's take a listen to it.
The future of the Democratic Party is not looking good. Not looking good at all, and that is good for America. It is not a negative. It is a positive. I have with me David Pakman. He is a progressive host and executive producer of the nationally syndicated radio and TV program, The David Pakman Show. And I wanted to talk to David about the Democratic Party, political correctness, and President Trump's performance. It's a year now since he's been elected. And the great white hope is making America great again. David, welcome back to the show.
Oh, I can't even tell you what a pleasure it is to be back with you today. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. I want to talk to you about the great white hope first, the president. How would you rate him? You know, he's been elected a year now. And how would you rate the president on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being best?
I would say probably a 0.
Really? And why is that?
Well, I judge him by his own campaign promises. He was going to build a wall with Mexico that they would pay for. That's not happening. It's not going to happen. He was going to repeal and replace Obamacare with something better. 3 proposals to replace it all would have led to 15 to 23 million people ending up without care, but all of those failed to pass. Another big campaign promise. He said he would do it right away. Failed to do it. He said he was going to renegotiate trade deals, still hasn't done that. He also said he was going to pass a tax cut bill, not looking good. The Senate now in a whole bunch of trouble trying to figure out, well, how do we do this? It's going to explode the deficit. We're not going to be able to go back to our constituents and explain to them why did we vote to explode the deficit. So, I mean, I think by his own standards, he's accomplished none of the things he promised to accomplish.
Well, he hasn't been there a year yet. He was elected a year ago today. Do you expect, or did you expect all those things to happen within the first year?
Did he? I mean, he's the one who said. He's the one who said.
He didn't say he would do all those things in the first year.
Are you asking me whether I believe Donald Trump's campaign promises? Is that the question?
I'm asking you, did you believe that the president, the great white hope, would do all those things in the first year of being in office?
I didn't believe him when he said he would repeal Obamacare right away. No, I didn't believe him.
How about the rest of the things that you mentioned? Did you think he would do all those things in the first year of being in office?
No, but he hasn't done any of them.
Amazing.
Hold on, Jesse. Wait a second. You tell me what he's done. How would you rate him?
Well, we have a conservative Supreme Court justice on the U.S. Supreme Court right now. We have the jobs are coming back.
What jobs? Talk to me about the jobs, Jesse. How has the job creation rate changed from President Obama? Give me the numbers. We've got a record 95.3 million people out of the workforce. Record. Historical high.
David, you must calm down. The filing of unemployment have gone down. The illegal aliens coming across the borders, are down. He has managed to put a hold on radical Islamic terrorist countries where they are coming into our country. It's a lot happening, but I don't want to.
The travel ban has been blocked.
I know
it's not true. What has President Trump done? Those talking points mean nothing. The travel ban has been blocked 3 times.
I know that you don't like the man, so nothing he's going to be able to do will make you happy. So
that's not true, Jesse. I want to move. You're putting words in my mouth, and you know that's not fair.
Mainly,
I can tell you what he could.
You really should
calm
down.
You're not being honest here, Jesse. You know that.
Calm down, David. For over 60 years, the Democratic Party has gotten worse, destroying the family, masculinity. They hate men, real men, straight men.
What's an example of that? Can you give me some evidence of that, Jesse?
They hate the unborn child, so they are still pushing abortion. They have no love or respect for blacks and Hispanics. They believe that the blacks and Hispanics are only worth is for a vote. They are attacking Christianity and white straight male. You are a progressive. What does it mean to be a progressive? What is that?
It's for progress and against stagnation and a return to values that are outdated and irrelevant in modern society.
And what type of progress? Give me an example of progress.
The reduction in incredibly damaging economic inequality, the push for a basic level of health care for everybody, regardless of ability to pay, a push for an economy that is not going to allow the richest to become endlessly richer while the poor continue to be poor. I mean, there's a long list. I mean, I think, the problem is that there's a lot. I'm not a Democrat, by the way. I've never been a Democrat. So if the idea is to get me to...
No, you are a progressive, so I'm asking about that. So let me ask,
Well, I didn't even finish answering the question. How long do we have? Because this is a very weird interview. We didn't even... I was trying to get you to tell me exactly what Trump had done to achieve those so-called achievements, and you moved on to the Democratic Party. It's a very strange interview. I've never experienced anything like it.
Well, that's the first time in life for everything. Let me ask, the military paid for so-called sex reassignment surgery. and our tax dollars are paying for it, even though we don't agree with that at all. Is
We
that
being who?
The conservative Christian people of this country.
Well, that's just a fraction of the population, right?
Is that progress when men are confused about their gender and women are confused about theirs, and now we're paying for it? Is that progress?
Are you a fiscal conservative, Jesse?
Answer that question, David. Is that progress?
Well, are you a fiscal conservative?
David, answer that question. Is that progress?
It's not an example of something that is or isn't progress, but the reason I'm asking whether you're a fiscal conservative
what would you
is
call that,
it's
David?
cheaper
David,
to
what would
pay
you
for
call
those
that?
procedures
Why-
than to
why did-
discharge, to find and discharge every transgender member of the military. So if you're a fiscal conservative, and I've
David.
heard you say that you are, you should favor the cheaper
Why do
option,
we have
which
this
is
guy
paying
back
for
on the
those
show?
procedures and not paying for what it
James.
would cost to find and discharge all those
David,
transgender military members.
David, you're not here to communicate. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to let you go. It's a waste of time to talk to you. We're not communicating. You're acting like an
No,
idiot.
because you're asking bizarre questions
You're
and not
acting
answering
like an
any of them.
idiot, and you're wasting my time. I appreciate
ad
you
hominem.
coming. All right, thank
It's
you
an
for
ad
coming.
hominem, so you know
Goodbye.
that.
Goodbye. Let him go. That's a progressive, folks. All men who are progressive, or males who are progressive, are weak people. They are weak people. And why have these people on? It doesn't even make sense. They don't come to communicate because they're too insecure. And David Pakman is a very insecure progressive. Real men are not progressive. I'm progressives, whatever they are. That's not the nature of a man. I don't even know why you guys invited that guy back. Amazing stuff. This is what has happened to the men of America today. Not all, but many of them have become girly men. Girly men. It's ridiculous. It's not progressive when the military is paying for a confused male or female. I mean, we don't know yet, was it a man who was put on a woman's body parts, or was it a woman who put on a man body parts and pretended to be something that they're not? The military paid for that, folks. Can you believe that? We are paying for it. The military is not paying for it. We are paying for it. So I just want to make sure you know out there that we had David Pakman on before, and I forgot that we had him on. My producer reminded me that we had, but I forgot that God can't communicate. He's a deceiver. He is part of the family of the children of the lie. So I never would have had him back on. It's a waste of time. My producer's here, James. Why did you have him back?
Because he's a, as you picked up on, he's like a lively debater.
Well, he's not a debater.
Well, I know, but in the sense that he is lively and very well-known, popular, respected in terms of being like a
respected by who? The children of the lie?
Yeah.
Oh, respected by Satan's folks.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, like, he is a little different from them in that he seems to think a little bit more for himself. Like he doesn't.
He
fall
doesn't.
For I know, but he seems to.
But how you seem to? He didn't do it the first time he was on the show. He didn't do it just now. How to you he seemed to be different?
Because he definitely is different from them.
In what way?
He's
doesn't evil.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
There are so many mass shootings that it's tough to keep track of them and even keep up with them. And we're sort of so desensitized about it. And it's so normal that I didn't even get to covering a recent mass shooting in Northern California that left 4 dead plus the shooter. dead, a total of 5 people, including the shooter, and 10 people injured when the gunman went on a total rampage. It included him going to a California elementary school, although the latest information is that none of the casualties took place at the elementary school. I didn't even get to cover the story because there was so much else to talk about, and mass shootings are so common. But very strangely, when this shooting happened, Donald Trump tweeted condolences, but for the wrong mass shooting. We're going to put the tweet up on the screen for people, where Donald Trump tweeted just a couple days ago, "May God be with the people of Sutherland Springs, Texas. The FBI and law enforcement have arrived." But that's a message for the victims of the mass shooting from earlier this month that actually was in Sutherland Springs, Texas. And the fact that this tweet was almost identical to the one that Trump sent in early November when the Texas shooting took place is weird, to say the least. And Donald Trump later took the tweet down. More than half a day, the tweet spent up and was eventually deleted. So what's the explanation? Did Donald Trump mean to copy and paste the condolences from the last mass shooting that he tweeted about, but forgot to change the city and state? And also, why would he even go back so many tweets to copy and paste in the first place? Even that doesn't really make sense. Does Trump have some kind of template that he works off of? Maybe something like, may God be with the people of insert city and state here, or something like that. Consider how bizarre a world we're living in now, that the president of the United States is tweeting at midnight about the wrong mass shooting, and it's only like the 10th biggest scandal of that hour, never mind that day or week. And the White House hasn't, at least as of a couple of hours ago, commented about this. What happened here? Why did Donald Trump send out a tweet after the shooting in California about the shooting in Texas? Doesn't really make sense. And of course, the headline, the funny thing is, although it's not really funny, is Trump's the fool. He tweeted about the wrong mass shooting. There's really no reason that Trump should be confusing mass shootings that are weeks apart. But the real problem is that Donald Trump as president hasn't really done anything to address the fact that these shootings are happening. He has no real ideas about how to sensibly prevent these mass shootings from taking place. That's the real crisis. And if ludicrous tweets like these allow us to talk more about that, then that's something. And then there's also the issue of this deleting of tweets, right? A court is currently considering whether the president deleting tweets is a violation of the Presidential Records Act. We'll eventually see what a court decides about that. Whenever there are stories like these, I go back to thinking about the Electoral College. And I remember that the point of the Electoral College was supposedly to prevent the masses from being bamboozled or worked up into a frenzy where they vote for some moron, right? The idea of the Electoral College was to serve as a sort of insulator or insurance policy from the uninformed people electing a fool. It's supposed to protect us. Hasn't it failed miserably? Hasn't the election of Donald Trump confirmed that the Electoral College has actually failed us in terms of what it was originally meant to do, in addition to taking attention away from just population areas and making it so elected officials would pay attention to more parts of the country? The point of the Electoral College has completely failed. And every time I see something like this, Trump tweets about the wrong mass shooting with what seems to be a copy and pasted tweet from the last mass shooting, I go back and think about the Electoral College. 6 Democratic members of Congress are filing multiple articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. This is the biggest sort of official move to try to impeach Donald Trump so far. And I think that it is a terrible idea, and I will explain why. Previously, we had Democrat Al Green say that he was going to try to start the impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump. This time, it's 6 members of Congress in total. We've got Steve Cohen, Luis Gutierrez, Adriano Espaillat. Al Green is there, Marcia Fudge, and John Yarmouth. And Cohen says that there are more Democrats in the House that are going to join soon. There are 5 articles of impeachment that are being filed: obstruction of justice, violations of the Foreign Emoluments Clause, violations of the Domestic Emoluments Clause, undermining the federal judiciary, and undermining freedom of the press. I think that this is a very dangerous direction to go. And I've said it before, this is not a good idea. Now, I'm not trying to say that the charges alleged against Trump in these articles of impeachment are untrue or invalid. But I think that this is a really bad idea. Remember, it's the House that starts impeachment proceedings and the Senate that would ultimately vote as to whether they should remove the president from office. First of all, remember that even if impeachment were to succeed, which is completely unlikely, right? Aren't we worse off with Mike Pence as president? Less scandal, ideological Republican, would get terrible things done. I think that Mike Pence replacing Trump is terrible for the United States of America. First of all, though, when you have Democrats promoting impeachment in this way, without Republican support, you're setting yourself up to fail because you need Republicans in order to successfully impeach Donald Trump. If you get even all Democrats and then a couple of Republicans to support this, and then it fails, it's still really on the Democrats, and you are hurting yourself for the 2018 midterm elections. You're hurting yourself for the 2020 elections, and you will have Republicans campaigning, including Trump, on the Democrats did nothing while I was president except try to impeach me, and they failed. Vote for me for more Making America Great Again or whatever, right? It would directly play into Donald Trump's hands. And then the other issue is that if you do get Republicans in there to impeach Trump, you are much more strongly making the case for total and utter regime change. And I hate to use that term because it sounds sort of like a dictatorial term that we would use. But you make a much better case for voting them all out if you can say, hey, the same people that supported this guy now are just putting their finger in the wind and measuring the direction of the will of the people. They are major flip-floppers. So in every way, it's not going to work for Democrats to impeach Donald Trump. And if it fails, it only foments and strengthens what Trump has already planned to do, which is just to point to Democrats of having done nothing but get in the way or attempt to get in the way during Donald Trump's first term. You don't want to energize the right in any way, and you can't impeach Trump with just Democrats, and there is no indication right now that Republicans are willing to jump on board. So yeah, this will get attention. It's not going to go anywhere. I think it is a bad idea. And most importantly, the best scenario might be no impeachment. Trump stays in the Oval Office riddled with scandal day in and day out, unable to get anything done, hurts Republicans. They get crushed in the midterms, and Trump gets voted out in 2020. Every day that goes by, I am more sure that that is the path forward. If you disagree with me, let me know. Explain to me why this impeachment idea from these 6 Democrats is a good idea. We've got a voicemail number. It is 219-2-David P. We talked about Ted Cruz recently on the show. Ted Cruz didn't like what I had to say about him, and he called in. Take a listen to this.
David, this is Senator Ted Cruz calling. I heard your segment today where you referenced me and you called me depraved and degenerate.
Right.
And that's fair. You have your opinion. But I also heard you say, as you launched into that quote about Roy Moore, which, well, yeah, it's strategic, but whatever. I mean, I have daughters, so yeah, it's gross. But you said that you could hear my unique and distinctive voice in your head. You know, you had an opportunity to really impersonate me with that juicy quote, and you didn't take advantage. The thing is, I sound exactly the way I look. All you got to do is look at me, and you can hear my voice in your head, echoing, like a leprechaun in a cave full of helium.
Yeah. Pretty good. So we've had some big names call in lately. We had Bill Clinton call in. Ted Cruz has called in. A lot of big names listening to the show. So that's exciting, for lack of a better term.
It's pretty good. He has the cadence down, I would say.
Oh, the cadence is almost perfect, and the voice is 90%
okay.
there. It's okay. Yeah. The echo thing I didn't like, though. On the bonus show today, Donald Trump has picked a ghost hunter to be a federal judge. Ohio sets a new execution date after failing to find an inmate's vein. What a lovely evening. And UCLA players apologize for shoplifting in China and thank the president, Donald Trump. We'll tell you about that on the bonus show. The Jenga tower has fallen, meaning that you can use coupon code JENGA58 for a 58% discount off of membership. I have stuck to my word. Jenga58 at davidpakman.com/membership. You can also access the bonus show by becoming a $5 a month patron at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. We will speak to you then.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.